Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 251, Meng Hao's Tao of Alchemy. Each and every Black Civ sect cultivator in the enormous square watched on with excitement. It was as if massive thunderbolts had struck their hearts and minds, and continued to echo out. The Forge of Heavens is what gives birth to the transformations of the sun and moon. The words echoed out, causing everyone to pant. The beautiful woman stared at Meng Hao with wide eyes. Next to her, Patriarch Violet Civ was so moved that he closed his eyes. Everything grew silent. Xianxia's expression immediately changed. How could he possibly have imagined that Fang Mu would be able to speak so viciously? He felt as if a sharp blade had pierced into his very heart. Zhu Decan took in a deep breath and stood there, trembling. He wasn't excited, though. Actually, moments ago, he had actually thought Xianxia to be correct. But hearing Fang Mu speak, he knew what he said to be the truth. Xianxia took a deep breath and composed himself. "Grandmaster Fang, you startled me," he said, staring dead at Meng Hao. "However, it doesn't matter whether you are talking about the sun and moon, the sky, or the forge of heaven and earth. All exist on the path of alchemy. All types of plants and vegetation can be concocted into medicinal pills. All spirits and souls can concoct the spirit of the pill. What I disagreed with just now was Grandmaster Zhu's assertion that the self is unchanging, but that pill formulas contain countless variations. I said nothing about the transformations of the sun and moon of which you speak. In my opinion, alchemists must embrace transformation of the self. Only by embracing transformation can countless variations be produced. Only in this way can you speak of endless pill formulas, or concoct the endless varieties of medicinal pills that have existed since ancient times. Your Excellency did mention a person being able to produce countless variations," said Meng Hao coolly. Once again he spoke slowly and calmly. As he stood on the dais, the breeze lifted his long hair, blowing it across his face, partially obscuring the stellar glow in his eyes. Countless variations? The wind and clouds, the thunder and lightning, these are all heavenly changes. The quaking of the earth, the rise of mountains, the flow of great rivers, these are earthly changes. Are you responsible for these great changes of heaven and earth? Is the rain which falls from the sky birthed by the will of Grandmaster Chen? Grandmaster Chen, is it your will which causes the rise and fall of mountains? That was to be my second question. However, there's no need for you to attempt to respond to it, because you can't. In truth, you are no Grandmaster. Even if you become one in the future, you will never be worthy to lay claim to such transformations. Can the transformations of heaven and earth truly be contained in your heart? How laughable! As conceited and arrogant as the king of Yelang. You truly overestimate yourself. Meng Hao was now ridiculing Xianxia in the same voice that Xianxia had used to ridicule Zhu Decan. The words cracked like lightning, causing Xianxia's face to flicker. You really do have a sharp tongue. That's obviously not what I meant. You're completely exaggerating what I said. I was speaking only of pill-concocting philosophy. Philosophy? I would love to hear some more details. I speak of nothing other than the philosophy of transformation, he replied immediately. Take the best of many schools of thought and fuse it into your own. Absorb the finest aspects of your acquaintances. Eliminate the dregs which exist in the self. Refining pills is like refining the self. By reaching perfection, the path to the pinnacle can be trodden, and the full power of transformation can be employed. The surrounding Black Civ sect disciples seemed to approve of his words. He continued in a voice that could sever nails and chop iron. It's like when a painter paints a mountain. He first observes millions of mountains, and then is capable of painting his own. That mountain he paints will contain the essence of all the other mountains he observed. Thus, a masterpiece is created. Similarly, millions of tiny streams will fuse together to create a great and boundless river. This is the philosophy of which I speak. assemble the thoughts from many schools, and coalesce them in the self. This is my path, and how I achieve the Tao of alchemy. He flicked his sleeve, and his eyes glittered as he stared at Meng Hao. I'm curious to hear Grandmaster Fang's philosophy of alchemy. His words echoed out into the hearts of the tens of thousands of Black Civ sect disciples. Han Bei looked on thoughtfully. Behind Meng Hao, Zhu Dekan stared, an introspective look in his eyes. Meng Hao looked back at Chen Jiaxi, his expression the same as ever. His tone light, he began. When a painter observes millions of mountains, then paints one, perhaps his painting contains the essence of the mountains he observed. However, the mountain he paints is not real. It emerges from his imagination, and is what he believes a mountain to be. In truth, he has already forgotten the first mountain he ever saw, because he has seen too many. He has also forgotten the feeling he experienced when he gazed at that first mountain's peak. Millions of streams fuse together to become a great and boundless river. But that river is no longer the stream it once was. It is the amalgamation of many waters, fused together and indistinguishable. That first tiny stream which dreamed of being a river is now dead, killed by the very process it desired. The process of his pursuit causes the painter to forget that first mountain, and because of that, the very reason he wished to paint a mountain in the first place. The process of becoming a river causes the stream to lose itself. Its will is diluted as it becomes a river, and then it is gone. As he spoke, Meng Hao's voice grew louder. This is my third question. By fusing many schools of thought, you lose yourself. You think you have benefited, but in reality, you have no path of your own. If you have no ideal of your own to adhere to, then you have observed millions of mountains, but forgotten why you wanted to paint a mountain to begin with. Without principles of your own to stick to, then you are a stream that has become a river. However, such a river has no soul. That is true death. Meng Hao flicked his wide sleeve. His words poured into Chen Jiaxi's ears and sent his mind spinning. As cultivators, we must adhere to our own set of principles. As alchemists, we must adhere to our own Tao of alchemy. Acquaintances and other schools of thought can bolster or support our confidence. But we must never allow the process of the search to result in losing our own ideal. If the heart is unyielding, nothing can ever supersede it. This type of heart may seem as if it contains transformations, but in reality, is stable, a foundation. From beginning to end, it will never disappear. It will always exist. An unchangeable heart. Meng Hao's powerful words shook the square. Chen Jiaxi's face twisted, and without even thinking about it, he retreated a few paces. His eyes shone with confusion. If your heart yields, how can you create anything lasting? Meng Hao continued. Grandmaster Chen, you do not possess a resolute heart. Do you truly have the confidence to mention other schools of thought? Do you have the courage to boast shamelessly of blending together your own path? Do you truly dare to speak to me of the Tao of alchemy? Silence filled the square for a moment, and then conversations filled the air. Chen Jiaxi was panting, and his heart was filled with confusion. Behind Meng Hao, Zhu Dekan trembled, his mind reeling. All of a sudden he realized why after all this time he had never been able to become a Violet Furnace Lord. Over the years, I've paid too much attention to the Tao of alchemy of those around me, he thought. I've picked and chosen randomly. I've forgotten about the path I originally wished to tread. If your heart yields, how can you create anything lasting? Patriarch Violet Civ and the beautiful woman exchanged a meaningful glance. Only the ruddy-faced old man next to them sat there with his eyes closed, not having moved a muscle. A buzz of conversation rose up from the Black Civ sect disciples. Meng Hao's words had caused great waves of emotion to rise up in their hearts. You. Chen Jiaxi's face was pale. Next to him, Li Yiming was breathing heavily. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. His voice thundered up to the heavens. Because the self never changes, the heart can tolerate the ever-changing transformations of the sun and moon, the maelstroms of heaven and earth, and those arduous journeys through thousands of crags and tens of thousands of torrents. The Tao of alchemy is eternal. The countless transformations contained within the heart are the pill formula. The unchangeable self is the pill furnace. I am the pill furnace, and my heart is the pill formula. Refine the interior to achieve immortality. Refine the exterior to achieve the boundless Tao of alchemy. Fuse them together, and this is the truth of alchemy. Alchemy is the heavens. Alchemy is the earth. Alchemy is the world. This is my Tao of alchemy. Finally, the ruddy-faced man next to Patriarch Violet Civ opened his eyes and looked at Meng Hao. Each and every one of the Black Civ sect cultivators, regardless of who they were now looking at Meng Hao. A silence as thick as death hung over them as they stared with brightly shining eyes. Zhu Decan stared excitedly at Meng Hao. As of now, not a shred of doubt existed in his heart. All of it had been replaced by passion and pride. It was all because of Fang Mu, alchemist of the East Pill Division. He had already made up his mind. When he returned to the sect, he would help Fang Mu to gain the acceptance of the other Furnace Lords. Actually, after this debate, it wouldn't take long for the entire southern domain to be talking about Fang Mu. Chen Jiaxi's face was pale, as if his spirit were completely gone. Next to him, Li Yiming was covered in cold sweat and was mumbling to himself. What no one could tell was that he was actually reciting Meng Hao's words and branding them onto his heart. An indescribable silence filled the square. Everyone was shaken to the core by Meng Hao's words. Patriarch Violet Civ and the other nascent soul cultivators were all thinking exactly the same thing. This kid has a limitless future. Nonsense! Cried Chen Jiaxi, his shrill cry breaking the silence. He leaped up onto the dais to stand directly in front of Meng Hao. His eyes were bloodshot and glared angrily at Meng Hao, shamed into rage. You're nothing but sharp-tongued and shameless. If words could concoct pills, then even mortals could practice alchemy. I have been cultivating the Tao of alchemy for years. I have memorized 100,000 varieties of plants and vegetations. I know of 800,000 grafting variations. You finagled your way to being a Furnace Lord, but really, you're nothing more than a master alchemist. In this regard, do you dare to compete with me? Chen Jiaxi really had no other option left. His previous aggressiveness had been thoroughly trampled down by Meng Hao's fierce diatribe. It felt like being slapped across the face, like having a dagger plunged into his chest. As an alchemist, all of it was a direct attack on him. How do you want to compete? Replied Meng Hao, his voice cold, and his eyes filled with an icy air. He had long since decided to thoroughly crush Chen Jiaxi. Chapter 252, Crushing You and Me, a contest of plant and vegetation knowledge, said Chen Jiaxi, glaring at Meng Hao. In his opinion, Fang Mu had finagled his way to being a Furnace Lord, and was far too young to compare to him, considering how many years he had spent working with plants and vegetation. He had utmost confidence in his ability. True, there were people within the sect who could surpass him, but he was absolutely sure that he could achieve victory over this trifling, sharp-tongued Fang Mu. Even as he spoke, he waved his right hand, causing 2 black, withered branches to fly out of his bag of holding. Dried spring equinox sapling, thought Zhu Decan, staring at the dried branches. These treasured items have been passed down since ancient times. Dried spring equinox sapling. Chen Jiaxi grabbed one of the branches and held it in his hand. Grandmaster Fang Mu. You most likely do not recognize this item, so allow me to explain. This plant is rarely seen in the modern world, and does not occur naturally. The ancient method used to produce it has long since been lost. It has many uses, but it is because of one of its most amazing uses that it came to be called the ancestor of all plants. Contained within this ancient plant is the essence of most types of plants and vegetations. As such, an alchemist such as myself can fill my spiritual sense with all my knowledge of plants and vegetation, imbue it into this dried spring equinox sapling, and cause it to sprout. The greater the body of knowledge, the more sprouts will appear. This will clearly prove which of us has the greatest mastery of plants and vegetation. Chen Jiaxi only had these 2 stems of dried spring equinox. He had previously acquired them through a series of lucky coincidences, and considered them to be precious treasures. Now that he had been pushed into a corner, He pulled them out in his attempt to grow his reputation in the future. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever, although inside he was actually leaping up and down with excitement. He had read about the dried spring equinox stem in the ancient records. It had miraculous usages that were difficult to explain. One of its greatest functions was its ability to improve the success rate when concocting medicinal pills. By adding one of the stems to a batch of medicinal pills, the success rate would be increased significantly, perhaps even to 100%. Without the slightest hesitation, Meng Hao took the dried spring equinox stem in hand and glanced down. In his heart, he felt that it was a bit unfortunate. This particular dried spring equinox stem was somewhat small, only about as thick as a finger. "Grandmaster Fang, let's begin," said Chen Jiaxi eerily. He sounded like he couldn't wait to crush Fang Mu. All of the cultivators from the Black Sieve sect looked on with expressions of concentration. The benefits they had received from this particular alchemy lecture were hard to quantify. Han Bei sat in the crowd, looking at Meng Hao. Zhu Decan was feeling a bit anxious. He had heard the story of the shocking way Meng Hao had passed the test to become a master alchemist. But he was still worried. Seeing his expression, Chen Jiaxi's confidence grew stronger. He didn't wait for Meng Hao. Instead, he poured spiritual sense into the dried stem on his palm. With a cold laugh, he said, "The appearance of one sprout indicates mastery of 100,000 types of plants and vegetation. 2 sprouts represents 200,000 variations. Grandmaster Fang, I suggest you take the situation very seriously." A bright glow began to emanate out from the dried stem, filling the entire square and attracting the attention of all the onlookers. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever. His spiritual sense burst out, flying directly into the dried stem. Time passed slowly, enough for a single incense stick to burn. Suddenly, a green sprout appeared on the dried stem in Chen Jiaxi's hand, the same you might see during the spring equinox. 100,000 plants. Grandmaster Chen has already shown mastery of 100,000 plants. Who knows how many Grandmaster Fang, her? Even as the Black Sieve sect disciples began to discuss the proceedings, 2 sprouts appeared on the stem in Meng Hao's hand. Meng Hao's expression was calm as the 2 sprouts appeared. However, the onlookers were shocked, as was Chen Jiaxi. His eyes went wide. He had never seen anyone be able to produce 2 sprouts from the dried stem in the time it takes 1 incense stick to burn. "It doesn't matter," he comforted himself. "Considering my skill with plants and vegetation, I will definitely be able to defeat this finagler in the end." A snide expression filled his face. However, it was at this exact moment that a 3rd sprout appeared, then a 4th, a 5th, and 9 sprouts appeared in total. It all happened in the space of about 10 breaths. The scene caused gasps of astonishment to fill the air. The Black Sieve sect cultivators were completely astounded. How is this possible? 9 sprouts. That represents 900,000 medicinal plants, 900,000 variations. This Grandmaster Fang is so young, how could he have such terrifying skill with plants? That's 9. Suddenly, a 10th sprout grew out of the dried stem. Chen Jiaxi, on the other hand, had only produced 3 sprouts. Impossible, thought Chen Jiaxi, his eyes growing red. He just couldn't believe what he was seeing. His hair was in disarray, and he let out a wild howl as he attempted to make more sprouts come out as quickly as possible. Actually, he hadn't clearly stated earlier what level of mastery he had obtained. In reality, he only knew 900,000 plant and vegetation variations, placing him at the peak of the 2nd realm. As such, he really could only cause 9 sprouts to appear. It was at this moment, right after the 10 sprouts had appeared on the stem in Meng Hao's hand, that suddenly, a flower bud appeared. It wriggled out, immediately attracting everyone's attention, even Chen Jiaxi's and Li Yiming's. A popping sound rang out as the flower bud opened, into a tiny white flower. Li Yiming's face drained of blood. An ancient dried spring equinox blooming. His expression was one of ultimate astonishment. He was well aware of the significance of the dried stem blooming. His voice filled with excitement, Zhu Decan said, 100,000 medicinal plants, 1 million variations, 100 million grafting variations. The blooming of the ancient tree represents the millions of grafting variations. If 10 flowers appear, it represents all 100 million graft variations. He had never imagined that Meng Hao's skill with plants and vegetation could have reached such a shocking level. Most furnace lords' mastery of plants and vegetation stopped somewhere in the tens of millions. Only violet furnace lords could reach the level of 100 million grafting variations. You. Chen Jiaxi gaped in astonishment at Meng Hao, his mind reeling. His vision began to grow dim. Even in his wildest dreams, he would never have imagined that Fang Mu's mastery of plants and vegetation could have reached this shocking state. Had he known, he would never have attempted to compete against him. His voice quavered, and his body trembled. He was about to say something more when suddenly a second flower appeared, then a third and a fourth. One flower after another, rocking Chen Jiaxi's spirit. The cultivators in the square were thrown into a frenzy. They stared at Meng Hao with looks of complete shock and disbelief. 6 flowers. 7 flowers. 8 flowers. 9 flowers. Every new flower sent waves of astonishment through the hearts of the onlookers, even Patriarch Violet Civ and the 2 patriarchs next to him. Their breathing was ragged as they watched Meng Hao, their eyes burning. Finally, the 10th flower appeared. When the 10th flower appeared, Chen Jiaxi's vision went black. He was on the verge of passing out. Anguished howls of grief welled up in his heart. This turn of events could never have been predicted. How could he have encountered someone so inhuman here in the Black Civ sect? In truth, were he to know that Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, he would certainly pass out immediately. Inhuman, thought Zhu Decan, his body trembling, his vision blank. This was not a competition between 2 people. Fang Mu had completely crushed Chen Jiaxi. There was simply no way for him to even fight back. He was utterly and thoroughly defeated. Patriarch Violet Civ and the 2 others were breathing heavily, staring fixedly at the calm Meng Hao, as if he was some sort of precious treasure. A massive commotion of conversation exploded among the Black Civ sect cultivators. The cultivators in attendance all had some knowledge of the Tao of alchemy. How could they not understand the significance of what they were seeing? Grandmaster Fang Mu. The dried stem blossomed 10 times. The ultimate achievement, 100 million grafting variations. Amidst uproarious hubbub, Meng Hao suddenly lifted his head. Without even looking at the dried stem, he put it into his bag of holding. Obviously, he didn't plan to return it. So, do you still want to compete in plants and vegetation? He said. In front of him, Chen Jiaxi's face was deathly pale, and his entire body was quivering. He tilted his head back. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes shone with demented insanity. Yes, he cried, staring at Meng Hao, his eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. He hated that his opponent was so young, yet possessed such mastery of plants and vegetation. He hated that his opponent was an East Pill Furnace Lord. He hated that his opponent left him speechless, both with his words and his Tao of alchemy. He especially hated that his opponent wouldn't let him win, wouldn't let Chen Jiaxi trample over him to rise to prominence. His hatred seeped into his bones, giving rise to devilish insanity. We will compete in instantaneous formula scrying, said Chen Jiaxi, his voice hoarse. Down below, Li Yiming had planned to pull him back. However, after seeing the wild, animalistic look in Chen Jiaxi's eyes, he simply sighed inwardly. All right, if you want another competition, you'll have it, said Meng Hao coolly. Glancing over at Chen Jiaxi and his maddened state, he added another thought. However, a competition like that bores me. If you want to compete, then let's make a bet. Any pill produced that the other party can identify will be surrendered immediately. Zhu Decan gasped at the viciousness of it. This would truly be the fatal blow. Li Yiming's face twisted. At the same moment, Chen Jiaxi seemed to recover some of his common sense. However, he couldn't let go of the hatred within his heart. He pushed his common sense down, ignoring it. Fine. I won't stop until I win. His voice rang out, causing all of the Black Civ sect disciples to let out a collective gasp. Li Yiming and Zhu Decan both seemed to be shaking with anxiety. I won't stop until I win indicated that the competition wouldn't be over as long as there were medicinal pills to produce. The only way it could end would be for someone to quit, and that would be the ultimate defeat. Li Yiming was incredibly worried as he watched red-eyed Chen Jiaxi slap his bag of holding to produce a medicinal pill, which he then tossed over to Meng Hao. Meng Hao grabbed it and looked at it. World Mirage Pill. Heavenly Dawn Sap, 100 Tomb Soil, Peace Dissemination Leaf, 9th Sexagenary Grass. Having finished speaking, Meng Hao placed the medicinal pill in his bag of holding and looked at Chen Jiaxi. Chen Jiaxi glared at him. He wanted to say that Meng Hao was wrong. However, they were both alchemists. To do that would lose him even more face than being openly defeated, and he would lose any right to continue. He slapped his bag of holding to produce another medicinal pill, which he threw over to Meng Hao. Frigid Lightning Pill, said Meng Hao coolly. Not many of these pills exist. It requires root of seasonal glory grass, harvested amidst the snows of winter, as well as gold and iron sap, lightning fire grass. He continued to list out dozens of medicinal plants. This pill, interesting. I'm not sure of the name, but it contains power to strengthen the arms. It's obviously a body-refining pill. It contains indomitable mountain flower, containment sapling. This is actually a magic pill which can melt the blood and transform it into explosive power. It contains crushed green burst, celestial heaven oil. Fellow Daoist Chen, you have many unique pills. Excellent, excellent. I'm not sure the name of this pill, but it's clearly a poison pill. It contains. Time passed by slowly. Ju Decan stared on in shock. Chen Jiaxi seemed to be on the verge of collapse, his face as pale as death as he tried to outdo Meng Hao. However, he really had no chance. He was essentially just handing over his medicinal pills. In the time it takes for only half an incense stick to burn, he had already delivered nearly 100 different medicinal pills over to Meng Hao. Chapter 253, Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. In the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, 100 different types of medicinal pills had been delivered over. Chen Jiaxi trembled. His face was ashen. His madness had reached an explosive height as he found that there wasn't a single medicinal pill he could produce that his opponent couldn't identify. This level of skill left Chen Jiaxi in despair. He wanted to cry that his opponent was wrong, but he didn't dare. If Fang Mu then used the formula to concoct an identical copy of the pill, Chen Jiaxi's entire reputation would be in ruin. Li Yiming stood off to the side, watching bitterly as Chen Jiaxi handed over pill after pill, and Meng Hao put pill after pill into his bag of holding. His scalp was numb, and his heart had filled with an indescribable fear. The surrounding Black Civ sect disciples watched the scene in astonishment. From their perspective, Chen Jiaxi wasn't competing with Fang Mu, he was just giving him pills. On the other hand, Meng Hao's actions left them buzzing with shock. His unfathomable skill with plants and vegetation, his irrefutable logic regarding the Tao of alchemy, and his fearsome instantaneous formula scrying just added layer after layer of mystery. As they watched him, their faces filled with continuously growing amazement. From beginning to end, Meng Hao didn't pull out even a single medicinal pill. This was because he never misidentified any of the pills that were produced. Eventually, he started to feel a little bit embarrassed. Chen Jiaxi, of course, had the worst of it all. His heart bled, his eyes were growing dry, and his body trembled. Everything seemed to be going black. However, he continued to pull out medicinal pills. He had utmost confidence in each pill, and yet they all ended up in his opponent's bag of holding. There was no way to put an end to it. Just now, he had said, "I won't stop until I win." He wouldn't be able to end until he ran out of medicinal pills. As he pulled out the 127th pill, he suddenly lifted his head to look at Meng Hao. Then, he radiated madness as he slowly put the pill back into his bag of holding and instead retrieved a jade box. The jade box was covered with black splotches, as if it had been entombed in the earth for countless years. This was an object that Chen Jiaxi originally hadn't intended to reveal. To him, it was a precious treasure of a lifetime. In fact, When he had uttered the words, "I won't stop until I win," he hadn't even considered to include this item in the statement. Suddenly, he realized that if he wanted to gain complete victory, he would have to win at least one time. And if he wanted that, then he must use the item in the jade box. After all the fierce struggle now, pulling out this object finally gave him hope. The instant the box appeared, all eyes came to rest upon it. Anyone could tell that the pill inside this box would most certainly determine victory or defeat. The black stains on the box made it obvious to all the onlookers that the box was so old it was beginning to decay. There was even a faint, gruesome death aura wafting out from the box. A serious look filled the eyes of Patriarch Violet Civ and his two companions. Xianxia gritted his teeth and slowly said, "If you know the formula to this pill, then I, Xianxia, will admit defeat and, if I ever meet your excellency in the future, will immediately fall to the ground and kowtow to you. If you don't know the formula, then I will not cause any further trouble for you. I will only require that you return all the pills I produced just now. Then, this matter will be concluded." Zhu Decan's eyes narrowed, and before Meng Hao could say anything, he strode forward and beratingly said, "Xianxia, you are a scarlet-robed master alchemist of the World Pill Division. Do you have any face? This is obviously an ancient medicinal pill whose pill formula has been lost for countless ages. How could a modern-day alchemist possibly be able to identify it?" He was obviously worried about Meng Hao leaping to accept the challenge. A buzz rose up from the surrounding Black Civ sect disciples. An ancient medicinal pill. Such pills from ancient times were very rare. Even one would be enough to cause an incredible stir. Furthermore, the formulas for most ancient pills were lost. Even the three great alchemists might have trouble identifying an ancient pill. Each and every such pill could be considered a consummate pill. Where did Grandmaster Chen get an ancient medicinal pill? You almost never see something like that. If it were auctioned off, the price it would get would be unimaginable. Could it be one of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain's treasures that he bestowed upon Grandmaster Chen as a gift? As the conversations broke out, Li Yiming took a deep breath. Even he never imagined that Xianxia would possess an ancient medicinal pill. "Do you dare?" shouted Xianxia, glaring at Meng Hao. Meng Hao looked at the jade box, and his eyes filled with imposing aura. He had seen an ancient medicinal pill before, the day Grandmaster Eternal Mountain had visited the Violet Fate sect. That pill had been an entrancement pill. Meng Hao thought for a moment, and then his eyes flickered with resolve. He made a grasping motion, and the jade box in Xianxia's hand flew over to him. Seeing Meng Hao agree to the challenge caused Zhu Decan's heart to fill with anxiety. Li Yiming also appeared shaken. Xianxia, on the other hand, let out an inward sigh of relief. His eyes filled with a cold sneer. He knew from the moment his opponent had agreed that victory was his. He had acquired this treasured ancient medicinal pill a few years ago from some old painter. It had nearly left him in poverty, and he had been forced to concoct pills like a slave for 3 years as part of the deal to acquire it. He didn't dare to casually consume it. He planned to wait until his longevity was reaching its end before doing so. Or perhaps he would trade it for some incredibly priceless treasure. As a matter of fact, the pill's appearance had already caught the attention of the Black Civ sect. It seemed they already were interested in acquiring it. Meng Hao took hold of the jade box. His expression was serious as he slowly opened it. As he did, a reddish glow shined up from within. Faint strands of celestial music drifted about, and within the glow, the phantom image of a young boy could be seen. He appeared to be dancing in pleasure. The image instantly caused Patriarch Violet Civ and his two companions to gasp. The beautiful woman immediately rose to her feet. The amazement of the surrounding Black Civ sect disciples was really at its peak. Buzzing conversations filled the air, and Zhu Decan's face went pale white. An ancient medicinal pill which can create illusory images. This pill is even surrounded by celestial sound. Just what pill is this? Li Yiming was also completely shocked as he stared at the glowing red light emanating up from Meng Hao's hands. As for Xianxia, a fresh breath of life seemed to have washed over him. He was in high spirits, and gave a cold laugh as he looked at Meng Hao. Seeing Meng Hao's look of intense concentration, he lifted his chin. "Grandmaster Fang, considering your skill in the Tao of alchemy, Don't tell me that you can't identify this pill. Ah, forget about it. I'll just explain it for you. You know what pill this is? The name of this pill should be known to all alchemists. This is one of the 3 great medicinal pills of the ancient Tao of alchemy. Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. The Black Sieve sect cultivators didn't seem to be familiar with the name of the pill. However, upon hearing the name, Li Yiming immediately stood up. A look of disbelief filled his face as he stared at the glow rising up into the sky. Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. Zhu Decan was panting, and his body shook. He took a few steps forward, breathing raggedly, staring at the medicinal pill in Meng Hao's hands. Suddenly, his voice rang out through the Black Sieve sect's massive square, crimson glow, a dancing child accompanied by celestial music. This is most certainly one of the 3 great ancient medicinal pills. Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. According to the legends, anyone who consumes this pill can steal luck from the heavens and increase their longevity by 1,000 years. The audience buzzed in excitement. A medicinal pill which can increase longevity, even if only by a 60-year cycle, would be incredibly rare. The price people would be willing to pay for such a thing would be unthinkable. A consummate pill which could increase lifespan by 1,000 years was even more incredible. Patriarch Violet Sieve's eyes shined with unprecedented brightness. The only other time a glow like this had been seen in his eyes was when he had been about to snatch ultimate vexation. After all, his longevity had long since been approaching its end. The ruddy-faced old man next to him also looked at the jade box with profoundly glowing eyes. He began to mutter to himself. With his chin set complacently, Chen Jiaxi looked at Meng Hao and said, "Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill." The word primordial includes 10,000 variations of plants and vegetation. As for the words heavenly replenishing, it is just as Grandmaster Zhu just said. It can increase longevity by 1,000 years. Chen Jiaxi was now completely back in control of himself. He had suffered defeat before, but with the appearance of this pill, he now viewed himself as having already won. "Grandmaster Fang," he continued, "I believe it's now your turn. Please, tell me the pill formula for the Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill, if you're able." He glared at Meng Hao aggressively. Everything went quiet, as all eyes focused on the crimson glow emanating out of the jade box, and the red pill which rested inside. Li Yiming also seemed to have recovered his wits. He took a deep breath, and his eyes began to shine. He knew in his heart that there was no way Fang Mu could achieve victory now. Zhu Decan cursed silently. This was an ancient pill, one of the 3 great miraculous pills. Its name was majestic, and there was definitely no modern-day alchemist who could know the formula. He took a step forward. Glowering at Chen Jiaxi, he said, "Chen Jiaxi, you are scarlet-robed alchemist of the World Pill Division. Such tactics as this are contemptible. People like us, even people like your master, Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, could never identify the formula of the Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. Furthermore, the contest just now was to identify pills that you had concocted. Did you concoct the Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill? Even you don't know the formula, yet you dare to bring it out as part of this contest." Chen Jiaxi laughed coldly. "This was agreed upon by Grandmaster Fang," he said in a growling voice. "You can't claim that I'm breaking the rules." He ignored Zhu Decan, and stared again at Meng Hao. "Grandmaster Fang, I'm not the only person awaiting your answer. There are tens of thousands of others who are all eagerly awaiting to hear the pill formula. Haven't you been looking at the Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill for long enough?" He took a step forward and, seeing Meng Hao's brow furrowed as it was, felt all his previous feelings of depression melting away. "If you can't identify it, then so be it. However, you must produce all of my pills from just now and return them immediately." "Fang Mu," he shouted, his voice echoing throughout the square. "Can you, or can you not identify the pill formula?" Meng Hao slowly raised his head. His gaze moved from the medicinal pill and came to rest on Chen Jiaxi. Chapter 254, Thunder Across a Plain. This pill. Meng Hao's face looked the same as it always did. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. His voice echoed out as if from unfathomably deep waters, immediately attracting the attention of all the onlookers. Everyone, even Zhu Decan, seemed to have assumed that Meng Hao had already lost. He didn't appear to have even the slightest hope of achieving victory. Even a Violet Furnace Lord wouldn't be able to identify the pill formula of an ancient pill. "What of this pill?" interrupted Chen Jiaxi. "Fang Mu, why be wordy about it? Losing is losing. There's no need to struggle against it." He gave a cold laugh. Meng Hao looked calmly at Chen Jiaxi. When he spoke, his words were neither hasty nor halting. "The outer layer of this pill bears evidence of having been buried in the ground for at least 1,000 years. Its death aura is dense, infecting even the jade box. However, the pill has not been harmed at all. The strange thing is that the middle layer of the pill is different. It contains only 700 years of time. Furthermore, although some of the plant and vegetation variations appear at first to have been refined with the ancient non-smelting technique, in fact, there are actually traces of smelting fire on them." As Meng Hao spoke, Chen Jiaxi's cold smile grew wider. "The inner layer of the pill," continued Meng Hao, "is very strange. There are 17 various plant and vegetation variations there, none of which exceed 200 years in age. That is why it took me a bit longer to inspect it. I'm not sure why this supposed primordial heavenly replenishing pill, which can extend one's lifespan by 1,000 years, would have an exterior, a middle, and a center that are so vastly different." As soon as he finished speaking, a buzz rose up from the audience. "What does that mean? Don't tell me the pill is a fake. How could it be fake? There was obviously celestial music just now, and the dancing child. Those things couldn't be fake. Don't tell me Fang Mu is just babbling nonsense." As the cultivators discussed the matter, Chen Jiaxi began to laugh uproariously. His grim, cold laughter echoed out in all directions. He flicked his sleeve, and once again spoke, his voice dripping with ridicule. "Fang Mu, by simply admitting defeat, then I, Chen Jiaxi, could show respect to your status as a Furnace Lord of the East Pill Division. But instead, you use low-down, underhanded means to attempt to achieve victory. You try to besmirch this ancient medicinal pill by saying that it's a forgery. Competing with you has truly brought me great loss of face. What a waste. I can't believe the East Pill Division has produced an alchemist such as you. Such an utter disgrace. No wonder you had to finagle your way into being a Furnace Lord. Now I, Chen Jiaxi, thoroughly understand the entire situation." Li Yiming's expression also filled with derision. Zhu Decan's face was bright red. As an alchemist, defeat should be recognized, and respect for the Tao of alchemy should never be forgotten. He sighed inwardly, and was just about to open his mouth in an attempt to smooth the situation over, when Meng Hao's calm voice once again rang out. "When did I ever say the pill was a forgery?" he asked, his expression the same as ever. He appeared to be completely oblivious to the gazes of the onlookers, as well as to Chen Jiaxi's complacency. "You sharp-tongued punk," cried Chen Jiaxi, throwing any thoughts of mercy to the wind. "Are you still trying to argue? Just now you obviously implied that the pill was fake, didn't you? Do you have an explanation for that? Fang Mu, do you have even the slightest scrap of face left?" All the Black Civ sect disciples were now looking at Meng Hao. Their faces were filled with strange expressions. Patriarch Violet Civ and the other two watched on wordlessly with furrowed brows. "Would you pipe down?" roared Meng Hao. His eyes filled with a brilliant light that shone like lightning on a pitch-black night. His words echoed out like thunder across a plain, echoing out with such force that Chen Jiaxi's mind was instantly shaken. Without realizing it, he stepped backward a few paces, the sound ringing in his ears. Meng Hao stepped forward. He spoke, his words devoid of any courtesy. "You babble nonsense. You invert right and wrong. You don't measure up to me when it comes to the Tao of alchemy, nor can your skill with plants and vegetation compare to mine. You are even further behind when it comes to instantaneous formula scrying. And yet you still dare to bare your fangs and brandish your claws in front of me. I, Fang Mu, made 3 points just now, and none of them contained the word forgery. That word came from you You self-righteous twit. This competition was your idea. Defeat after defeat has revealed your true face, you stooge. You ask me if I have face? Let me ask you, who is there that would possibly give face to you? Meng Hao's voice grew louder and louder, each sentence stabbing into Chen Jiaxi's psyche like a sharp sword. His eyes filled with flames of fury. However, as Meng Hao approached him, dread welled up in his heart, and he again retreated. You are a mere scarlet-robed master alchemist of the World Pill Division. Even people above you in the World Pill Division don't qualify to constantly accuse me of finagling my way into being a Furnace Lord. I became a Furnace Lord because of the graces of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, and he approved of the pill I concocted. Therefore, repudiating me is the same as repudiating Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, and therefore the whole of the World Pill Division. Meng Hao took another step forward, his words ringing out around him in a roar. Such actions on the part of a member of the World Pill Division are nothing less than treason against your sect. The roar of Meng Hao's words sent Chen Jiaxi's mind spinning. His eyes filled with veins of blood. You! His body trembled and he raised an accusatory finger toward Meng Hao. He was normally capable of sharply incisive words, but now, his mind was in chaos, and he couldn't even speak. Meng Hao's words roared out like thunder. In an attempt to further your personal glory, you're even willing to repudiate Eternal Mountain and commit treason against your sect. You are a lowlife, worse than pigs or dogs. What makes you think you have the face to stand in front of Fang Mu and rave so arrogantly? What gives you the courage to stand on the same stage as me when I am lecturing about alchemy? Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. His words slammed into Chen Jiaxi's ears, causing his body to shake and his mind to reel and rock. Fang Mu, he shrieked shrilly. Finally, let's discuss this medicinal pill of yours. Its exterior is 1,000 years old, its middle is 700, and its interior roughly 300. It is no forgery. However, it will not add 1,000 years to your lifespan. Why? Because this pill is clearly a poison pill. The outer layer is simply a coating, while the middle layer serves to conceal the poison congealed within the center. What kind of scoundrel alchemist are you to produce such a pill? Furthermore, what is your intention in bringing it out? Don't tell me you plan to sell it to the senior generation of the Black Civ sect. Upon consuming this pill, the qi passageways will turn backward, and the qi and blood will reverse their flow. Within the space of 3 breaths, you will begin to bleed from your eyes, nose, and mouth. Within 10 breaths, your garments will be soaked with gore, and you will be in such excruciating pain that you will wish you weren't alive. After enough time passes for an incense stick to burn, your blood will freeze, and you will be dead. Meng Hao waved his hand, sending the jade box and the red pill flying back to Chen Jiaxi, who stood there, his hair disheveled, his entire body quivering. Meng Hao gave a cold snort, then continued in a voice that could sever nails and chop iron. That is the response of Fang Mu. If you pulled out a forgery, I could identify it easily. But to pull out a poison pill like this shows how truly pernicious you are. Worthy of death. There is no need for me to continue to compete with you. Chen Jiaxi felt as if his mind were being ripped in two. This is no poison pill, he bellowed madly. If so, then why don't you consume it? Said Meng Hao, his voice as sharp as a blade, his eyes flickering like lightning. You, raved Chen Jiaxi. He had gone through countless hardships to acquire this pill, and actually had planned to sell it at an exorbitant price to the Black Civ sect. However, Meng Hao's words just now had caused Patriarch Violet Civ and the other 2 patriarchs to stare suspiciously. The surrounding Black Civ sect disciples also stared, their expressions grim. Li Yiming felt as if his internal organs were about to burst. The tables had turned too quickly. Just now, Chen Jiaxi had clearly been in the superior position, and then in a blink of an eye, everything had been reversed. Li Yiming's mind spun blankly. It wasn't just him. Zhu Decan watched on dumbly. He had been very sure that the pill was real, and had never imagined that the events just now could occur. Everything Meng Hao said seemed perfectly reasonable. You. Chen Jiaxi's mind spun so violently he almost couldn't comprehend what was happening. He had been pushed into the ultimate corner by Meng Hao. If he didn't consume the pill, then everyone would obviously suspect him. Fang Mu, he howled. Suddenly, he threw the pill into his mouth. Immediately, streaks of blood snaked through his eyes, and blue veins bulged on his forehead. He looked like some sort of devilish fiend. Patriarch Violet Civ hesitated for a moment when this happened, but didn't move to interfere. The ruddy-faced man sitting next to him also was shaken inwardly, yet did nothing. "I've consumed it," he howled, glaring at Meng Hao. "Did you see, Fang Mu? I consumed the primordial heavenly replenishing pill." 1, 2, 3, said Meng Hao, his voice light. When he said the word 3, 3 breaths had passed. Chen Jiaxi's face suddenly changed. His body began to tremble, and his face distorted. He let out a blood-curdling scream, and then blood began to ooze out of his eyes, mouth, and nose. Immediately, all of the cultivators present on the 57th mountain of the Black Civ sect burst into a commotion. Many of them shot to their feet, their eyes filled with astonishment. Li Yiming's vision began to grow dark, and his mind filled with a spinning roar that caused him to nearly lose consciousness. Zhu Dechen gasped, his face filled with disbelief as he looked at Chen Jiaxi standing there, screaming miserably, blood dripping down his face. Patriarch Violet Civ's pupils constricted, and then began to fill with fury. Next to him, the ruddy-faced old man frowned, and his eyes began to fill with displeasure. Meng Hao stood there on the stage, continuing to count softly. 4, 5, 6. As Meng Hao counted, Chen Jiaxi fell to the ground, screaming shrilly. His body thrashed, and blood flew everywhere. His qi passageways had reversed, and popping sounds could be heard ringing out from within his body. A mist of blood sprayed from his mouth, turning his red robe into a true garment of gore. All of this was exactly as Meng Hao had described. Soon, the 10th breath would arrive, and Chen Jiaxi would die. However, the moment Meng Hao spoke the word 9, his body suddenly flickered forward. His right hand pressed down onto the top of wheezing Chen Jiaxi's head. Immediately, Chen Jiaxi's screaming ceased. His body trembled, and his aura was feeble, but it seemed that his trip down the road of death had paused momentarily. From the look of it, though, he only had a few moments left before death found him. "For the sake of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, Fang Mu is going to save your life today," said Meng Hao coolly. His face was as calm as ever. Therefore, no one knew that his heart was actually surging with waves of indescribable excitement. Chapter 255. She was floating in the wind. As soon as the words were out of Meng Hao's mouth, he slapped his bag of holding. A pill cauldron flew out along with some earthly fire crystals and a host of medicinal plants, which Meng Hao began to work with. In front of everyone, he began to concoct a pill. He worked at incredible speed. To everyone watching on, it seemed obvious that he must be doing all of this in an attempt to save Chen Jiaxi. Apparently, in order to completely ensure his success, he even extracted a drop of blood from Chen Jiaxi's forehead. The blood entered the pill furnace, clearly as a way to make the medicinal pill more effective in purging the poison. Everything was deathly silent, and all eyes were on Meng Hao as he concocted the pill. From the moment he had stepped foot into the Tao of Alchemy, this was the quickest he had ever concocted a pill. It only took a few moments for a fragrant aroma to fill the square. Meng Hao then waved his hand, and a pink-colored medicinal pill flew out. It shot like lightning into Chen Jiaxi's mouth. His life clearly hung by a mere thread at the moment. Tens of thousands of eyes were fixed on Chen Jiaxi. As soon as he consumed the pill, a tremor shook his body. Then, even more shockingly, his hair began to rapidly change color, from black to white. His skin began to wither, as if his vitality had seeped away. In the space of a few short breaths, he seemed to have aged nearly 100 years. Before, he had been middle-aged, but now he looked like an old man with one foot in the grave. Wrinkles covered his face, and he emanated ancientness. Before, his cultivation base had been at the late foundation establishment stage, but now it seemed to be vanishing because of his decrepitness. The entire process, from beginning to end, only took about 10 breaths worth of time. Chen Jiaxi looked completely different. He was now a feeble old man with no cultivation base. However, the death aura which had been drifting off of him moments ago had been replaced with life force. When this happened, his eyes suddenly opened. Suddenly he coughed up a massive congealment of blood, along with what remained of the medicinal pill. It was about the size of a fingernail, half as large as it had been before. It wasn't the pill Meng Hao had concocted, but the pill everyone had taken to be the primordial heavenly replenishing pill. As soon as he spat the pill out, Meng Hao waved his sleeve, collecting it into a pill bottle. Before he could put it into his bag of holding, however, Patriarch Violet Siv's eyes flickered. He waved his right hand, causing the pill bottle to fly out of Meng Hao's hands and into his own. Meng Hao ignored this, focusing instead of Chen Jiaxi, who was trembling, a look of confusion in his eyes. In the moment before the poison killed you, I managed to prevent it from continuing to dissolve. The poison is not impossible to dispel. However, given my current skill in the Tao of alchemy, I was unable to find the proper combination of medicinal plants in such a short time. Therefore, I used the simplest method possible, and also the most direct. I stimulated your life force, and shattered your cultivation base. In this manner, I was able to force out the poison. As for your cultivation base, if you practice recuperative cultivation, it should slowly recover. Chen Jiaxi said nothing as Li Yiming rushed over and helped him to his feet. Chen Jiaxi stared blankly at Meng Hao, then let out a bitter laugh. Eternal Mountain once said that alchemic battles are just like magical battles. Death can come with a single thought. As of today, I am convinced of this truth. With that, he clasped hands in salute. His body trembled, and he lowered his head to conceal the venomous hatred which seeped out from his heart. Li Yiming also clasped hands and bowed to Patriarch Violet Siv and the others. They clearly could not stay on the mountain, so he took hold of Chen Jiaxi and flew up into the sky, disappearing off into the distance. A few Black Siv sect cultivators rose to accompany them as they left. Considering all of Meng Hao's experiences, it was impossible for him to not notice Chen Jiaxi's hatred. Had that hatred not been there, Meng Hao, well aware of how much he had come out on top, would have helped the man recover his cultivation base more quickly. But now, he abandoned such thoughts. Long before he had become Fang Mu, he had learned to treat his enemies with icy coldness. Meng Hao turned to look at Patriarch Violet Siv, who was currently examining the medicinal pill which Chen Jiaxi had just vomited out. Elder Violet Siv, he said with a polite smile, I won that pill in the competition just now. If you would like it, sir, perhaps you could state what you intend to trade for it. Patriarch Violet Siv laughed loudly. Shaking his head, he flicked his sleeve, and the medicinal pill in its bottle flew back to Meng Hao. He had scanned it with divine sense just now. Even though he didn't know much about the Tao of alchemy, he was a nascent soul cultivator, who had lived many, many years. How could he not have an understanding of things like the ancient medicinal pills? Actually, he had previously specifically studied ancient medicinal pills. Just now, no matter how he examined it, he couldn't see anything particularly special about the pill. In fact, when he held it in hand, he could detect a fishy, rotten odor. After a brief discussion with the ruddy-faced man using divine sense, they had determined that it definitely was a poison pill. The fact that he so quickly returned the pill to Meng Hao had a lot to do with everything that Meng Hao had just said and done. Before, everyone in the Black Siv sect, including Patriarch Violet Siv and his companions, hadn't paid much more than a glance to Fang Mu. As of now, though, it was obvious to everyone that Fang Mu far exceeded Ju Decan. This was especially true of his final vicious display. From now on, Patriarch Violet Siv would pay closer attention to this Fang Mu. Meng Hao accepted the pill bottle with a smile, then casually tossed it into his bag of holding. The alchemy lecture was now over. Ju Decan invited Meng Hao to join him at a feast thrown by the Black Siv sect, but he politely declined. His face covered with exhaustion, he returned to Black Welcoming Peak. Back in his residence, he sat down cross-legged to restore his energy. Time passed by, and soon moonlight filled the sky. Meng Hao suddenly opened his eyes and waved his right hand. A pill furnace appeared, along with an earthly fire crystal. He also produced his Furnace Lord medallion, and its protective shield. After securing himself within the shield, he slapped his bag of holding to produce the pill bottle and the poison pill. He took a deep breath, and took out the jade box. He had placed it in his bag of holding much earlier. In reality, the medicinal pill really was one of the 3 ancient medicinal pills, the primordial heavenly replenishment pill. It was only half of the original pill, therefore, the essence of time and the medicinal strength within the pill hadn't completely vanished. In ancient times, pills were not concocted using flames. Instead, the power of heaven and earth was used. The jade box was actually the final step of the concoction process. After being sealed inside, the pill would gradually become complete. This was common knowledge. Almost all ancient medicinal pills that had been discovered were like this. Despite being sealed in the jade box, the passage of so much time caused most such ancient medicinal pills to gradually dry out and become defective, although they generally contained a bit of medicinal strength. Meng Hao had no idea how long this primordial heavenly replenishment pill had existed, but for some reason, it hadn't dried out and had contained the full level of medicinal strength. Furthermore, the pill contained the power of time. If Meng Hao had not mastered the technique to refine time, achieved enlightenment regarding the violet will incantation, and refined a spring and autumn tree, then it would have been very difficult to spot the uniqueness of this medicinal pill. All three were essential. If one were missing, he wouldn't have been able to pick up on the clues. Time was both visible and corporeal, yet at the same time, invisible and incorporeal. Ancient medicinal pills will dry out and reveal their ancientness. This was a result of their passage through time. However, this medicinal pill was different. It sucked in time, filling the pill with its illusory power. This pill was actually a time treasure. Because of that, when consumed, the pill would reverse the qi and blood passageways, and immediately cause the body to begin to wither and age. However, after that, when the pill was fully dissolved, then the true power of the primordial heavenly replenishment pill would explode out. That is exactly what had happened with Xianxia. The so-called medicinal pill that Meng Hao had concocted was a ruse to cover up the truth. The only function it had served was to smear over the evidence of the primordial heavenly replenishment pill in Xianxia's body. Meng Hao's true goal had been to first prevent Patriarch Violet Civ and the others from picking up on any of the clues, and next connive his way into getting the pill for himself. Meng Hao took a deep breath as he extracted the globule of blood from within the pill furnace and placed it into a jade bottle. Next, he put the primordial heavenly replenishing pill into the oven and began to clean the filth off of it. Then, he gingerly placed it back into its original jade box, which he then held up to examine. The true value of this pill to me is not its medicinal strength, but the fact that encased within it is the power of time. When it comes time for me to forge my treasure of time, I will be able to learn a lot from it. It will increase my chances of success by quite a bit. Meng Hao was itching with anticipation. He could only imagine the power that he would be able to wield after producing his own treasure of time. It's too bad that Xianxia will obviously never tell me where he got this medicinal pill. However, I should know soon enough. He lifted up the jade bottle, inside of where he had placed the globule of blood. This blood was from Xianxia. Once I'm able to produce a blood clone, the clone should be able to use its power to see the memories of whosever blood it was created from. Meng Hao's mind filled with excitement. As for Xianxia, he had chosen to fight with Meng Hao in terms of alchemy. His cultivation base hadn't been irreparably destroyed, and furthermore, they were in the middle of the Black Civ sect, and the victory had been made openly and fairly. Therefore, there were no negative repercussions. A few days passed by in a flash. The World Pill Division left, leaving the Black Civ sect alchemy training fully in the hands of Meng Hao and Ju Deccan. Patriarch Violet Civ personally requested that Meng Hao concoct some soul refining pills for the Black Civ sect. Such pills were nourishing to the soul. Meng Hao decided to politely decline. He didn't want to have to work in such close contact with the Black Civ sect. As for Ju Deccan, he seemed excited with the current situation. He had been giving lectures throughout the Black Civ sect, and was feeling quite content with everything. Meng Hao spent his time visiting the sites in the sect and paying respects to some of the conclave disciples. He tried in a roundabout way to get information about Xu Qing. After 5 days passed, he still hadn't seen a trace of her. As of now, he was starting to get worried. The Black Civ sect was a bizarre place. The incident with Ju Jie had solidified this fact in his mind. On this particular evening, Meng Hao was walking along in an area near the edge of the 100 mountains. He lifted his head up, and saw a woman standing atop one of the mountains off in the distance. She wore a black robe, and stood upon a stone pillar which jutted up from the mountain. The wind caused her garment, as well as her long black hair, to flutter about her. The instant Meng Hao saw her face, his mind trembled. This woman was beautiful, but cold and cheerless. He had been searching for her everywhere, and then suddenly, here she was, floating in the wind. Her expression was one of blankness. She stood on the stone pillar, looking like she wanted to float away. This was Xu Qing.